Hello everyone, I am Abdul Mbokari, the gospel teacher. Today, I'm going to discuss on the concept of Godparent. Is Godparent the will of God? The inception of the program called Godparent, is it the will of God? Now let's go. Godparent is a program set up by church authorities of the 21st century to substitute the function of a parent in nurturing and grooming a child in the principles and ways of God. That is, they help nurture the child to become mature in the things of God. Now, God's original intention for parents is for parents to teach their children, to nurture their children, to groom their children in His ways, so that the purpose and the destiny God has ordained for those children may be manifest in their lives. In other words, God wants parents to live a godly life, so much so that they may indoctrinate that godliness in the lives of their children. In Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 6 to 7, Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 6 to 7, God spoke and He said, "This commandment that you have learned should be in your heart, that you may teach your children when you sit at home, when you lie down, and when you wake up." God is instructing parents to live a godly life, to learn His ways and practice them so that they may teach their children. Because what you know is what you teach your children. God is instructing, obliging parents to live a godly life, and so much so that the godliness they might transfer, they might indoctrinate in the lives of their children, so that the purpose that God has for their children may be manifest. God is emphasizing parents to be intentional in grooming their children when they sit at home, when they lie down, that is evening devotion, when they wake up, that is morning devotion, constantly monitoring the lives of your children in the ways of God. This reason orchestrated the inception of the program called Godparent, because the church authorities have seen that parents are not training up their children, that parents are not living a godly life, so that they might teach their children. So they have organized a program, an entity called Godparent, so that responsibility might be delegated to the Godparent to execute the function on behalf of the parent. In Psalm 112 verse 1, God also spoke. He said, "Blessed is the man who fears the Lord and delights greatly in His commandment. The seed of that man shall be mighty upon the earth." So God is instructing parents also to be God-fearing. And when parents are God-fearing, they will teach their children, and their children will be mightier upon the earth. So this is the promise that God has made, that parents should be godly, and when parents are godly, they will teach their children. And when they teach their children in the ways of God, God will make the seed of those parents be mighty upon the earth. In other words, the destiny of a child is first initiated by the parent, because God has ordained a destiny for a particular child. So the parent should start that process so that the destiny, the blessings might manifest in the lives of that child. Now, my problem with the church authorities and the parent is, instead of the church authorities to enforce the will of God, to see that the parents are living a godly life so that they may teach their children, they didn't do it. They created a platform, another entity called Godparent, to subjugate that responsibility to the Godparent. Now, instead of parents living a godly life so that they might groom up their children, they end up subjugating that responsibility to also the entity called Godparent. And now, Jesus is teaching us in the book of Matthew, chapter 18, verse 3. Matthew chapter 18, verse 3. He said, "Except you change and become like little children, you can never enter the kingdom of heaven." You can never represent me. You cannot go under my authority. Jesus is telling us not to be childish, but childlike. He is telling us to inculcate some of the characteristics of a child towards their parent. Now, there are a lot of characteristics, but let's take one. One is obedient. An obedient child can only do what his parent instruct him to do. That's why Jesus Christ told his disciples, he said, I can only say what I hear my Father say. I can only do what I hear from my Father. Now, you cannot force an adult to obey. Adults do what they feel like doing. Now, the point here I'm making, children obey, adults negotiate. That's why Jesus taught us, say, except you be like an obedient child, you cannot do business with God. You cannot represent God. Now, the church authorities have now become an adult, that they can no longer be obedient to God. They are figuring things out on their own. And that's why instead of enforcing the will of God, they have created a program called Godparent to substitute the program God has designed. This is what Prophet Isaiah saw, that people are creating a program outside the will of God, claiming that it is the will of God. In Isaiah 40 verse 13, Isaiah chapter 40 verse 13, he said, who can counsel God? Who can give knowledge to God? Who can tell God what to do? God, who is the source of wisdom, who is the source of knowledge, who can tell him what to do? This is what church authorities have done. They have created a program outside the will of God called Godparent. Instead of enforcing the parent to live a godly life, they have created a program called Godparent. This is what the program they have initiated to substitute a program of God cannot be effective. In the book of Proverbs chapter 19 verse 21, Proverbs 19 verse 21, it says, many are the plans in a man's heart, but the instruction of the Lord shall stand. In other words, many are the programs that man has created outside the will of God, but none can be effective except they pursue the instruction of God. This is why I was baptized in the Catholic Church, and they asked me to choose a godparent, and I choose. Immediately after the baptism, that was the end. I cannot remember a day my godparent taught me about God. So the point I'm making, all those programs will never be effective outside the will of God, except God's instruction being pursued. Otherwise, all those man-made programs will not be effective. Also, in marriages, the godparent is not responsible to teach the couples about God. It is a responsibility God has assigned to the man. The man should teach his family. That's why in the case of Adam and Eve, God never gave his word to Eve. He gave his word to Adam. Adam taught his wife Eve. So God is instructing every husband to incline themselves in the things of God so that they may teach their family. And this is the main reason why today we have a lot of corrupt politicians, a lot of corrupt lecturers, corrupt administrators. This is the reason, because they were nurtured outside the principle of God. They were nurtured in an ungodly home. This is the reason. Parents, church authorities, let's go back to the first law God has assigned to parents. By so doing, our siblings, our children will be mightier upon the earth. Thank you very much for listening. If you want to reach me, visit my Facebook page, Abdul M. Bokari, the Gospel Teacher. Or you reach via WhatsApp 076 755 460. God bless you as you be a blessing to others by sharing.